Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Pardon me. And this is what I call my morning musings. I'm currently doing a review of an article that was written in an attempt to respond and to refute the preterist view of eschatology. The article was written by Dr. William Lane Craig. It is entitled Orthodox Preterist. And it was actually written some time ago, but the article was only recently sent to me. I was unaware of it. And in the article, Dr. Craig gives three basic fundamental reasons why he rejects the partial preterism of scholars such as N.T. Wright. I've been examining his reasons, demonstrating how they're just simply not based on text. They're really quite illogical, and furthermore, they're self-contradictory. And it's amazing to me that a scholar of his obvious acumen and erudition would make such really gross mistakes in his argumentation. Pardon me. One of the things that is just glaringly absent from Dr. Craig's, William Lane Craig's article, and remember now, he says that as we look at the promises of the coming of the Lord, we have to view that from the perspective of the observer. Well, the perspective of the person who's hearing the promise, the person from the perspective of the person seeing the speaker, etc., etc. Well, that's a self-defeating argument. But I want you to notice how this argument reflects and contradicts Dr. Craig's own argument. Now remember, according to Dr. Craig, we are supposed to view the promise of the coming of the Lord from the perspective of the viewer and or the speaker or the readers, etc. Okay. Paul, writing to the Thessalonian church, Paul, writing to the Corinthian church. Now, these are the two main texts that Dr. Craig gives as a refutation of the preterist view. He says because Paul was expecting the resurrection in these texts. Well, that's obviously true, but let's use Dr. Craig's own argument, what he calls the perspectival argument in relationship to Corinthians and Thessalonians. Here is Paul writing to living, breathing human beings, and he sends them a letter. And imagine that you are in the Thessalonian church. Imagine you are in the Corinthian assembly. And the letter is read, and you read twice from the Thessalonian epistle, brethren, those of us who are alive and remain until the parousia. What would you think as you hear that letter read to you in that assembly 2,000 years ago? Would you imagine for any reason whatsoever that Paul, when he said those of us who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord, that he wasn't talking about you at all? He wasn't talking about the then living human beings at all. He was talking about some far distant generation that was not alive, but you see, those of us who are alive is all in the present active indicative. Those of us who are present active indicative, alive, and those of us remaining, that's the literal of it, those of us who are remaining until the parousia. And we're supposed to believe that although Paul says that twice, he did not have the living, breathing Thessalonians in mind. Likewise, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, you're sitting in the assembly of the church at Corinth, and you're hearing 1 Corinthians, what we call 1 Corinthians 15 read, and Paul says, brethren. What brethren? Was he not writing to them at that time, brethren, we will not all sleep. Not all of us are going to die. Now, folks, that's perfectly parallel to Matthew 16, 27 and 28. The Son of Man will come in the glory of the Father with his angels, and shall reward every man according as his work shall be. And verily I say unto you, there are some standing here which shall not taste of death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. What would be the perspectival view of those at Corinth when Paul wrote to them when they heard Paul's letter saying, we're not all going to die before the coming of the Lord, before the resurrection? So you see, Dr. Craig's perspectival argument, we have every right in the world to apply it to Paul's emphatic statements in Thessalonians and in Corinthians. And his perspectival argument demands that it was the Thessalonians and it was the Corinthians to whom Paul promised the Lord was coming back. The resurrection was going to occur in their lifetime, in their generation. Well, we've got more. Don't forget, though, get a copy of my book, We Shall Meet Him in the Air, The Wedding of the King of Kings. Go to my website, eschatology.org, BibleProphecy.com. Order the book, mention that you saw it on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll refund your shipping. Thanks so much for joining me for this morning's Morning Musings. See you on the flip side.